In the sun-baked lands of Canaan, an elderly couple's life was about to change forever. Abraham, a man of unwavering faith, and his wife Sarah had long since given up hope of having a child. Their tent stood silent under the scorching desert sun, a testament to years of waiting and disappointment. One fateful day, as the heat shimmered across the sandy horizon, 3 mysterious visitors arrived at Abraham's camp. Little did he know, these weren't ordinary travelers, but divine messengers bearing extraordinary news. As Abraham hurried to provide hospitality, conversation unfolded that would alter the course of history. "Where is your wife Sarah?" one of the visitors asked, his voice carrying an otherworldly authority. "There, in the tent," Abraham replied, gesturing towards their dwelling. Then came the astonishing proclamation. "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah your wife will have a son." Sarah, eavesdropping from inside the tent, couldn't help but laugh to herself. After all, she was well past childbearing age. How could this be possible? But the Lord, for it was indeed the Lord himself who spoke, challenged her disbelief. "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" he asked, his words resonating with divine power. As the visitors departed, leaving Abraham and Sarah in a state of wonder, promise hung in the air like a tangible force. A son, against all odds, a miracle in the making. The countdown to Isaac's birth had begun. The year passed, each day filled with anticipation and growing faith. True to his word, the Lord visited Sarah, and she conceived. The impossible had become reality. As Sarah's belly swelled with new life, whispers of amazement spread through their camp. Servants exchanged glances of wonder, and visitors marveled at the sight of the elderly woman, radiant with the glow of impending motherhood. Finally, the day arrived. The air was thick with tension as Sarah's labor began. Abraham paced outside their tent, his weathered face a mix of concern and joy. Hours passed, punctuated by Sarah's cries of effort. Then, piercing the air like a trumpet blast, came the unmistakable wail of a newborn. Abraham rushed inside to find Sarah, exhausted but beaming, cradling a tiny bundle in her arms. There he was, Isaac, the son of promise, his little face scrunched up as he took his first breaths in this new world. Laughter, once born of disbelief, now erupted from pure joy. Sarah, her eyes glistening with tears, exclaimed, "God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me." The name Isaac, meaning "he laughs," would forever commemorate this moment of miraculous fulfillment. As news of Isaac's birth spread, people from far and wide came to witness the miracle. Abraham, now a father at the age of 100, stood tall and proud, his faith vindicated in the tiny form of his son. As Isaac grew from a helpless infant into a curious toddler, joy continued to fill Abraham and Sarah's tent. However, not everyone shared in their happiness. Ishmael, Abraham's firstborn son through Hagar, watched the celebrations with growing resentment. On the day of Isaac's weaning, a grand feast was prepared. The aroma of roasted meat filled the air, and laughter echoed across the camp. But amidst the festivities, Sarah's sharp eyes caught a disturbing sight. Ishmael, now a teenager, was mocking young Isaac, his face twisted with jealousy and contempt. Sarah's joy turned to anger. She approached Abraham, her voice low but intense. "Get rid of that slave woman and her son," she demanded. "That woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac." Abraham was deeply troubled. Ishmael was his son too, and the thought of sending him away tore at his heart. That night, as the camp settled into uneasy silence, Abraham tossed and turned, seeking divine guidance. God's voice came to him in the stillness. "Do not be so distressed about the boy and your slave woman. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. I will make the son of the slave into a nation also, as he is your offspring." With a heavy heart, but trusting in God's promise, Abraham rose early the next morning. As the first light of dawn painted the sky, he prepared provisions for Hagar and Ishmael. With tears in his eyes, he sent them away, watching as they disappeared into the vast wilderness of Beersheba. The tent was quieter now, but the echoes of this decision would resonate through generations to come. Isaac, still too young to fully understand, remained the center of Abraham and Sarah's world. The child of promise, carrying the weight of a divine covenant on his small shoulders. Abraham's faith had been tested many times, but nothing could have prepared him for what was to come. As the first light of dawn broke over the hills, a voice that Abraham knew all too well spoke to him. It was God, calling his name with a gravity that made Abraham's heart race. "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah," the voice commanded. "Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." Words hung in the air like a death sentence. Abraham's mind reeled, his body frozen in disbelief. Isaac, the miracle child, the fulfillment of God's promise. How could he be asked to give him up? With trembling hands, Abraham prepared for the journey. As he saddled his donkey and chopped wood for the offering, his movements were mechanical, his thoughts a storm of confusion and anguish. Isaac, now a young man, watched his father with curiosity, unaware of the heart-wrenching plan. For 3 days they traveled in near silence. The weight of what was to come pressed down on Abraham like a physical burden. Finally, they reached the foot of the mountain God had chosen. As they began their ascent, Isaac's innocent question pierced the air. "Father, we have fire and wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham's voice quavered as he replied, "God himself will provide the lamb, my son." Each step up the mountain was a battle between faith and fatherly love, a test that would echo through the ages. At the top of Mount Moriah, Abraham built an altar, trembling hand. The stones felt impossibly heavy as he arranged them, each one a testament to his obedience and heartbreak. Isaac, beginning to sense something was amiss, helped his father in solemn silence. When the altar was complete, Abraham turned to his son. With tears streaming down his weathered face, he explained God's command. Isaac, displaying a faith that mirrored his father's, didn't run or fight. Instead, he allowed himself to be bound and placed on the altar. Abraham raised the knife, blade glinting in the sunlight. His arms shook with the effort of what he was about to do. In that moment, suspended between obedience and anguish, a voice rang out. "Abraham, Abraham." "Here I am," he replied, his voice barely a whisper. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," the angel of the Lord commanded. "Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Relief flooded through Abraham like a tidal wave. As he untied Isaac, hands now gentle and comforting, he spotted a ram caught in a nearby thicket. Together, father and son offered the ram as a sacrifice, their hearts overflowing with gratitude and renewed faith. As they descended the mountain, Abraham's step was lighter, his faith stronger than ever before. He had passed the ultimate test, and God's promise was reaffirmed. His descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. Years passed, and Sarah, the matriarch who had laughed at God's promise and then marveled at its fulfillment, breathed her last. Abraham mourned deeply, his grief a testament to their enduring love. But as the days of mourning came to an end, Abraham turned his attention to another crucial matter: finding a wife for Isaac. Determined that Isaac should not marry a Canaanite woman, Abraham summoned his most trusted servant. "Go to my country and my own relatives," he instructed, "and find a wife for my son Isaac." The servant, loyal but concerned, asked, "What if the woman is unwilling to come back with me to this land? Shall I then take your son back to the country you came from?" Abraham's response was firm: "Make sure that you do not take my son back there." He assured his servant that God would send an angel ahead of him to ensure success. Laden with gifts and leading a caravan of camels, the servant set out on his long journey to Nahor, Abraham's homeland. As he approached the town, he stopped at a well. The sun was setting, and women were coming out to draw water. There, the servant prayed for a sign. The woman who offered to draw water for him and his camels would be the one God had chosen for Isaac. Before he had finished praying, a beautiful young woman named Rebekah approached the well. When asked for a drink, she not only obliged but also offered to water all his camels. The servant watched in amazement as God's plan unfolded before his eyes. The search for Isaac's bride had come to an end, but a new chapter in the great saga of Abraham's family was just beginning. As the servant revealed his mission to Rebekah's family, excitement filled their household. Laban, Rebekah's brother, and Bethuel, her father, recognized the hand of God in this extraordinary encounter. "This is from the Lord," they declared, giving their blessing for Rebekah to become Isaac's wife. The next morning, faced with the prospect of leaving her family and homeland, Rebekah showed remarkable courage. When asked if she would go with Abraham's servant, her response was swift and decisive. "I will go." As Rebekah's caravan approached Abraham's lands, Isaac was out in the fields, lost in thought and prayer. Lifting his eyes, he saw camels approaching in the distance. At the same moment, Rebekah caught sight of a man walking towards them. "Who is that man in the field coming to meet us?" she asked the servant. "He is my master," the servant replied. Without hesitation, Rebekah took her veil and covered herself, a gesture of modesty and respect. As Isaac drew near, their eyes met. In that moment, a connection sparked between them, transcending the arranged nature of their union. Isaac took Rebekah into his mother Sarah's tent, and she became his wife. The love he felt for her brought comfort to his heart, still aching from the loss of his mother. With Sarah gone and Isaac married, Abraham's life entered a new phase. Took another wife, Terah, and had more children. Yet Isaac remained his heir, the son of promise through whom God's covenant would continue. Years passed, and Abraham's long and eventful life drew to a close. At the age of 175, full of years and having witnessed the fulfillment of God's promises, Abraham breathed his last. Isaac and Ishmael, reunited in their grief, buried their father in the cave of Machpelah, alongside Sarah. As the torch of leadership passed to Isaac, he found himself grappling with a challenge that echoed his parents' struggle. For 20 years he and Rebekah remained childless. The promise of countless descendants seemed in jeopardy once again. Remembering his father's unwavering faith, Isaac turned to prayer. He pleaded with the Lord on behalf of his wife. God heard his cry. Rebekah conceived, but her pregnancy was far from easy. She felt an unusual struggle within her womb, as if her unborn children were already at odds. Troubled, Rebekah sought answers from the Lord. The divine response was both a blessing and a prophecy. "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." The day of birth arrived, and true to God's word, Rebekah gave birth to twins. First emerged with a striking appearance, red and covered with hair like a garment. They named him Esau, meaning hairy. Moments later, his brother followed, hand grasping Esau's heel. This second son they called Jacob. He grasps the heel, a name that hinted at his future role as a supplanter. As the boys grew, their differences became even more apparent. Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, rough and rugged like the wilderness he roamed. Jacob, in contrast, was a quiet man, preferring the tranquility of the tents. Isaac, his love for wild game, favored Esau. The aroma of his son's freshly caught meals and the tales of his hunting exploits filled Isaac with pride. Rebekah, however, found herself drawn to Jacob's gentler nature and sharp mind. One day, as Jacob was cooking a stew, Esau came in from the open country, famished from his hunt. The rich aroma of Jacob's cooking filled the air, making Esau's hunger even more unbearable. "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished," Esau demanded, his voice rough with exhaustion and desire. Jacob, ever the shrewd one, saw an opportunity. "First, sell me your birthright," his eyes glinting with ambition. Esau, driven by his physical needs and showing little regard for his spiritual heritage, made a fateful decision. "Look, I am about to die," he exaggerated. "What good is the birthright to me?" In a moment of weakness, Esau swore an oath, trading his birthright for a bowl of stew. As he ate and drank, satisfied his immediate hunger, but oblivious to the long-term consequences of his actions, the stage was set for future conflict that would shape the destiny of nations. A famine swept through the land, echoing the trials of Abraham's time. Isaac, heeding God's warning not to go to Egypt, settled in Gerar, in the lands of Abimelech, king of the Philistines. There, the Lord appeared to Isaac, reaffirming the covenant made with Abraham. "Stay in this land for a while, and I will be with you, and will bless you." Trusting in God's promise, Isaac sowed crops in that arid land. Against all odds, he reaped 100-fold harvest. His wealth grew, his flocks multiplied, and his household expanded until the Philistines began to envy his prosperity. Tension mounted as the Philistines, driven by jealousy, filled in the wells Abraham had dug years before. Abimelech, fearing Isaac's growing power, demanded, "Move away from us. You have become too powerful for us." Isaac, choosing peace over conflict, withdrew to the valley of Gerar. There he reopened the old wells of his father, giving them the same names Abraham had used. But the hardships were not over. As Isaac's servants dug new wells, local herdsmen quarreled with them, claiming the water as their own. Well after well, Isaac faced opposition. He named them Esek, contention, and Sitnah, marking the strife that followed his every effort. Yet he persevered, moving on until he dug a well that went uncontested. This one he named Rehoboth, saying, "Now the Lord has given us room, and we will flourish in the land." From Rehoboth, Isaac journeyed to Beersheba. On the night of his arrival, the Lord appeared to him, offering words of comfort and reassurance. "I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I will bless you and will increase the number of your descendants, for the sake of my servant Abraham." Overwhelmed by God's presence, Isaac built an altar there and called on the name of the Lord. He pitched his tent, and his servants began to dig yet another well. Meanwhile, King Abimelech, accompanied by his advisor Ahuzath and his military commander Phicol, came from Gerar to meet Isaac. Surprised by their visit, Isaac asked, "Why have you come to me, since you were hostile to me and sent me away?" Abimelech's response revealed a change of heart. "We saw clearly that the Lord was with you, so we said there ought to be a sworn agreement between us." They proposed a treaty of peace, acknowledging God's blessing on Isaac. In a gesture of reconciliation, Isaac prepared a feast for them. The next morning, they swore an oath to each other. As Abimelech and his entourage departed in peace, Isaac's servants brought news of success. They had found water in the new well. Isaac named this well Sheba, meaning oath. And so the place became known as Beersheba, well of the oath, a testament to both divine promise and human reconciliation. As Isaac grew old, his eyes became weak, and he could no longer see. Feeling the weight of his years, he called for Esau, his firstborn and favorite son. "My son," he said, his voice trembling with age, "I am now an old man and don't know the day of my death. Prepare me the kind of tasty food I like and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my blessing before I die." Rebekah, overhearing this conversation, saw an opportunity to secure the blessing for her favorite son, Jacob. As Esau went out to hunt, she quickly set her plan in motion. She prepared Isaac's favorite dish and dressed Jacob in Esau's clothes, covering his smooth skin with goatskins to mimic Esau's hairiness. Jacob, carrying the savory meal, entered his father's tent. "My father," he said, his voice quavering with nervousness. "Who is it?" Isaac asked, his blind eyes searching the darkness. "I am Esau, your firstborn," Jacob lied, heart pounding. "I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game, so that you may give me your blessing." Isaac, suspicious of the quick return, reached out to feel Jacob. Though the voice was Jacob's, the hands felt like Esau's. Confused but convinced, Isaac ate the meal and prepared to give his blessing. As Isaac's words of blessing flowed over Jacob, promises of abundance, dominion, and divine favor, the deception seemed complete. But just as Jacob left his father's presence, Esau returned from his hunt, ready to claim his birthright. The scene that unfolded was one of shock, anger, and bitter regret. Isaac trembled violently upon realizing the deception. Esau's anguished cry echoed through the camp, "Bless me, me too, my father." But it was too late. The blessing, once given, could not be revoked. Esau's fury turned to murderous intent, and Jacob's triumph became tinged with the knowledge that he must flee to survive. In this moment of familial fracture, the complex tapestry of God's plan continued to unfold, weaving together human frailty and divine purpose in ways yet to be fully revealed. The aftermath of Jacob's deception sent shockwaves through the family. Esau's rage simmered, his thoughts bent on revenge. "The days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob," vowed in secret. But Rebekah, ever vigilant, caught wind of Esau's deadly intentions. With a mother's fierce protectiveness, she hatched a plan to save her younger son. Approaching Isaac, she expressed concern over Jacob marrying a Hittite woman like Esau had done. "I'm disgusted with living because of these Hittite women," she declared. "If Jacob takes a wife from among the women of this land, my life will not be worth living." Isaac, his heart heavy with the weight of recent events, summoned Jacob. Despite the deception, he recognized the hand of God at work. With a voice filled with authority and love, He blessed Jacob once more. May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and increase your numbers until you become a community of people. May he give you and your descendants the blessing given to Abraham, so that you may take possession of the land where you now reside as a foreigner, the land God gave to Abraham. With these words, Isaac sent Jacob away to Padan Aram to find a wife among Rebekah's brother Laban's daughters. As Jacob set out on his journey, the future of God's covenant rested upon his shoulders, though he was yet unaware of the profound encounters that awaited him. While Jacob embarked on his journey of exile and discovery, life continued in Isaac's camp. The aging patriarch, now fully blind, relied increasingly on those around him. Esau, still smarting from the loss of his blessing, sought to regain his father's favor. Realizing how his Hittite wives displeased his parents, Esau took an additional wife from among the daughters of Ishmael, Abraham's firstborn. This attempt at reconciliation, however, did little to heal the deep rifts within the family. Isaac's days were filled with quiet reflection. He pondered the tumultuous events of his life, the miracle of his birth, the harrowing experience on Mount Moriah, the joys and trials of fatherhood. Through it all, he clung to the promises God had made to his father Abraham and renewed with him. As news trickled in of Jacob's journey and eventual arrival in Padan Aram, Isaac's prayers were constant. He entrusted his son to the God who had guided their family through generations, hoping for Jacob's safe return and the fulfillment of the divine covenant. Years passed, and Jacob's absence stretched from months into decades. Isaac, his body failing but his faith unwavering, held on to the hope of seeing his son again. Rebekah, who had orchestrated Jacob's flight, never lived to see her beloved son's return, passing away before his homecoming. Finally, word came that Jacob was returning, not alone, but with a large family and considerable wealth. As the prodigal son approached his childhood home, tension mounted. Would Esau's anger still burn hot after all these years? Isaac, now 180 years old, waited with bated breath. The sound of an approaching caravan reached his ears, followed by the emotional reunion of his twin sons. To his relief and joy, Esau's embrace of Jacob was one of forgiveness and love, not the vengeance he had once sworn. In his final days, Isaac had the pleasure of meeting Jacob's wives and children, beginnings of the great nation God had promised. He marveled at how the Almighty had worked through their family's strife and struggles to bring about his divine plan. At last, Isaac's long and eventful life came to a close. With his last breath, he called his sons to his bedside. Esau and Jacob, once bitter rivals, now stood united in grief and respect for their father. Together, they buried Isaac in the cave of Machpelah, alongside Abraham and Sarah. As the patriarch was laid to rest, the torch of God's covenant passed fully to the next generation. Isaac's life, marked by miraculous birth, unwavering faith, and the complexities of family dynamics, had served its purpose in the grand narrative of God's redemptive plan for humanity.